folks, and welcome back to Board Game Breakfast. Well, it may not be morning when you watch this, and it certainly isn't Monday, and for that I do apologize, but Gen Con most certainly wiped us out. We were there for a week. We got there early to set up our booth and to go around and talk to people, and there's a lot we want to say about Gen Con, but what we are going to be doing is putting that into some other videos so you can see more information about that. But I do want to stop and say a huge thank you to everybody who came by. And it feels like everybody in the world did come by. Wow, our booth was just crowded the entire time, and we really appreciate everyone coming by. And a big thanks from me, especially to those of you who came and saw our live show, which was decent. Not as good as I wanted it to be, but I'm glad you came and saw it. And so many people, and I feel so bad that because it was a show right after us, that everybody just kind of had to leave and we didn't have a chance to say hello to everybody. I'll figure out a better way to do that next time. But thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, well, there's no fooling around here. It is time to get to the news. And what news? There's so much news this week that I fear there won't be any news next week, but we'll find out. First of all, Gen Con has announced that there was 61,423 people who came. That is a 9% increase over last year, and it certainly felt like it. That is a lot of people going to play games in one place. Will Wheaton has announced that he will be doing Tabletop Season 4 as well as his RPG Season 2. The biggest news of the week by far is probably the fact that F2Z, a conglomerate that already owns Z-Man Games and Pretzel Games and Philosophia Entertainment, has bought Plaid Hat Games. Now, this is not the end of the world. I'll do a segment on that later. People are always screaming end of the world. But Plaid Hat Games is still going to remain as they are with their own development, their own deciding what games they're going to produce. The only difference is that F2Z will be handling the logistics and all the business ends of everything. And the people at both F2Z and Plaid Hat were very enthusiastic about this when I talked to them at Gen Con. Upper Deck has announced several games, including another game that's not based on any IP, Pack of Lies, but you're more interested probably in the IP games. Their Legendary series, which has aliens and now has predators. They now have announced Firefly, which surprised no one in the world. But what was a surprise was they also announced a legendary version of Big Trouble in Little China. I guess maybe that's based on the fact that the reboot of that film is coming up. But hey, I love the original film, so that would be cool to see. Looney Labs has announced Retro Lunacy. These are things from the past. I think there's like a cassette tape and things like this in the game. Other than that, it's going to be pretty much the same game as the original Lunacy. Fantasy Flight Games has made a lot of announcements. First of all, there's another set coming out for Imperial Assault, Return to Hoth. This is a big box one. I think it's as big as the original game. Comes with lots of things, including a Wampa. Yeah! And there's more figures coming and packs and another wave. Dengar, Princess Leia. Also, for those who thought that this was going to shut down Descent, they quieted that by actually another full-size expansion for Descent is coming. The Mists of Biohall. Biohall, what a marvelous name. Went and looked at the nasty little monsters in that one. Glad to have more Descent stuff coming. And more X-Wing ships, another wave of those. These are based on Star Wars Rebels. And when I was there, everyone was super excited about a ship called Ghost. I didn't know much about that particular ship myself, but it certainly got a lot of people excited. And the Imperial Salt Carrier, which I thought was pretty cool, because you can actually dock ties onto this ship, which is a pretty neat thing, and adds another large ship to the X-Wing universe. They also announced Runebound. This is the 3rd edition of Runebound, and I've actually had a chance to play the new version. It is a much more streamlined, very different style of Runebound, where there's flipping of tokens and then using those tokens in combat. I'll be talking more about this, but suffice it to say, I was very impressed with the new version. Let's see, they also announced Warhammer Quest, the adventure card game. This is something completely new. It's based on the Warhammer Quest IP from Games Workshop. So I looked at it, but I didn't have a chance to go through the whole game, but that looks interesting. And Hoax. Now, Hoax is a small bluffing card game, think something like Coup. But this was designed, I think 30 years ago or so, by the same designers who made Cosmic Encounter. So that was pretty neat. And I got just piles and piles of more stuff coming. Tasty Minstrel Games announced that they're going to be reprinting Amun-Re, which we knew, but also that they're going to be reprinting Coliseum, which makes everyone happy. They're going to be doing this one as an Emperor's Edition, like Super Deluxe Edition, which I think you have to do if you want to match the quality of the Fantasy Flight Edition. How much will that be? What will it look like? We'll find out come October and November. Asmodee is showing off a lot of stuff that's coming out. There's a new Ticket to Ride map set coming, a double map side. One side is the Pennsylvania, yeah, like that, my hometown, with stocks. Like when you go from route to route, you can collect stocks, and getting stocks, a majority of stocks will get you points. It's a simple addition to the game, pretty easy, and it's not as complex as most stock games are. I think people like that. The other side of the board is incredibly fascinating, the UK. And on this side of the board, at the beginning of the game, each player can only build routes in England, and they can only build routes that are size 1 or size 2. And you have to pay tickets, pay train cards and stuff to get technology where you can build bigger routes. And you can build into other sections of the board, and you can use the ferries. So it has like a technological tree to it. So that's very interesting, a very gamery version of Ticket to Ride. We also got to see the Kemet expansion, which adds a Black Pyramid. Yeah! But even more than that, ways to customize special units on the board, these priests who come out and will have special abilities. There's an expansion for Abyss. Obviously, with Cold Express winning the Spiel des Jahres, there's an expansion for that, where there will be a stagecoach and horses, where you'll be able to jump on your horse and gallop up and down the train, or jump in a stagecoach and grab people there. Oh, man, looks like a lot of fun. From F2Z, or Z-Man Games, or Pretzel Games, actually, flick them up. There's going to be a giant-sized version of it. They were showing off giant-sized versions at the convention itself. People had fun with those. They're big and large, and I even got to play a duel against somebody in one in which I lost horribly, but lots of fun. And so this will be a big set, probably for a pretty hefty price. Yellow announced a whole pile of things. There is Shadows over Normandy. This is an expansion for their Normandy game that adds Cthulhu to it. So there you go. Let's see, we got Kitty Party coming, and what's really exciting is they're going to be redoing King of Tokyo for the iOS and Android and such, so you'll be able to play that online. But they're going to be coming out with a power-up expansion for King of New York. Yeah! So each of those monsters are just like the power-up expansion for King of Tokyo. And they're going to be selling monster packs with power-up cards that will be coming out, that will be designed by different designers. So that will be cool to be able to get different monster packs, and I think those will be really looked after. Let's see, also Happy Pigs, a game that I've reviewed before, I like very much, has been picked up by Yellow. Ape Games has announced that they're going to be picking up Tricarion, which is a game about magicians and such that was kickstarted, and so they'll be distributing that in America. That one looks really cool. Gale Force 9 has announced that they have the Star Trek license, and they'll be making some Star Trek boards. Now, Gale Force 9 is known for making games based on all sorts of licenses. They made one on Sons of Anarchy and Spartacus and Homeland and WWE. So they know, Firefly, probably the one everyone knows, they know how to take a license and work with it. So what will they do with Star Trek? Which Star Trek license do they have? And finally, Fantasy Flight has games coming about the new movie, Star Wars movie, but they can't announce them at all until they basically hit the shores, but they're already made. What are they? Who knows?
So while I couldn't go to Gen Con this year with all the cool kids, I did have the chance to go on a summer vacation with some family members to England. Interesting thing about London, it's a city of about 8.5 million people, but only a handful of gaming stores. Luckily, one of them was just a couple blocks from where we were staying.
Okay, so we are here at the Dark Sphere in London, England, with some new friends we've made. We just played a contentious game of the Resistance. We were the bad guys and we were triumphant. Go Team Jared Chloe.
That isn't even close to like what happened.
We do it pretty often, it's great.
Magic here is great, I love playing Magic here.
Oh, really?
It's really awesome.
There's always people to play with, which is great.
As evidenced by the abundance of faces in the room.
As crowded as can be. Okay, well, thank you so much.
We were also able to make some pilgrimage to some key sites of fantasy/geekdom inspiration.
Jessica, what's your impression of Stonehenge? It is really big. Yeah. We're actually here doing field research for a board game we're working on called Stonehenge Revenge.
And the gravesite of a certain thought leader in fantasy literature.
So today we have made a pilgrimage to the final resting place of J.R.R. Tolkien and his beloved wife. You can see their names are here. See, he's put Luthien and Beren, quoting the Silmarillion. Someone has very awesomely put a leaf of Lorien here, like the wee hobbits have in the Two Towers. And this is a really magnificent occasion.
Indeed, even when we weren't looking for gaming opportunities, we found them.
So I'm here at Shakespeare's birthplace in Stratford-on-Avon, and look what we should find at Games Workshop.
And of course, we played Love Letter on a Train. Okay, so next week we'll take a trip to the British Museum, which has some amazing relics of gaming history.
Hi, Suzanne here, and I'm continuing my thoughts on app pricing today. We're going to talk about the oh-so-controversial pricing strategy called free-to-play. Let's get our definition straight. Free-to-play is when you can download, play, and access all or almost all of a game's features for free. And then there are two primary ways companies generate revenue from this model. The first way is ads, and don't underestimate how much revenue these ads can pull in. Did you know Flappy Bird was making $50 a day in ad revenue? Of course, that was in part because it had 50 million downloads. The other way these apps make money is through in-app purchases, or IAP. And these typically consist of things like letting users pay for faster access or unique items, or adding levels or content to the game. Why use this model? Well, data. It shows that 90% of game revenue in the App Store, both in Apple and Android, come from IAP. And what's really interesting is that most of that revenue comes from a very small percent of people who actually play the game. All that said, board game apps don't tend to follow this model very often, and I suspect that's for a few reasons. First of all, I don't think that there's as much tolerance for or even space for that kind of paywall system in board game apps. Can you imagine if you were playing Catan and you could purchase the special ability to ignore the robber, but you had to play 50 times or pay $5 to get it? And all of that IAP and ad revenue really depends on huge download numbers. And let's face it, as much as our hobby has grown, we still come nowhere close to the numbers that traditional video games and app games pull in. A few games in our hobby have done free-to-play really well, at least from a consumer perspective. Ascension and Summoner Wars are great examples in which you get a solid initial game experience, but when you're ready to have more variety, you can buy the expansions. As a player, you're getting value from the start, and you don't feel like you're being forced into paying for something essential or something you don't want. Star Realms is another standout example of this kind of model in which you could play a complete campaign for free, and it was just $5 to access the more difficult challenges and unlock the online playability. But Star Realms revealed another quirk to board game app pricing. When the Gambits expansion released, some people were upset at the $3 price tag. Some felt that it was too expensive for the 18 cards they were getting, while others felt that it should have just been included in the $5 they had already paid. Next time, we're going to close out this series and discuss premium pricing, and I'm going to talk about why I think board game app prices should not be compared to other game app prices. See you then.
Okay, folks, well, this has been a bit of a recovery week with Gen Con here. Just coming, so we're not going to have as many reviews coming out this week, but you will see some reviews. You're also going to see some more stuff from Gen Con. We're going to do some videos where we talk about Gen Con. We'll have a video coming where Jason does kind of a travel log through Gen Con, and you'll see another top 10 list from Eric Summer, or from another 10 in his top 100 games of all time. So that stuff will come out. We might even do some live, so watch our channel. Some live Q&A. I'm going to try to do one today. It will be in the afternoon. I'm not sure exactly what time. It depends on when we get everything else done. And we'll probably do some other live stuff as time goes by. Well, so that's all coming out. We've already posted our live show audio from Gen Con. We'll be doing the video version of that, well, whenever I get it done. All right, well, so all that stuff's coming from the Dice Tower. You can find out all that information and all other podcasts at dicetower.com.
Hello, Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise here with the final installment in this Meeples for Sheepish Peoples series, discussing the social activity of board games in the lives of people who aren't necessarily socially outgoing. Well, this entire series of segments has been leading up to my very first trip to Gen Con. I had an interest in going last year, but I let myself use the anxieties of the travel, the crowds, and the hassle of it all to talk myself out of going, even though I immediately regretted letting it slip through my fingers. So, what's different this year? Well, I stopped listening to myself, and I started listening to myself. You see, last episode, I discussed the anxious little voice in one's head that can get worried and prevent us from participating in board game social gatherings. Alright, in order to go to Gen Con, first I need to book a flight. What if there's a plane crash? Well, yes, that would be unpleasant. But what if I stay home and there isn't one? Well, then I'd be disappointed that I let the opportunity pass by. That's how I learned that when that anxious little voice starts to worry about a decision that I have to make, to stop and ask myself, okay, at the end of the day, which decision will I be happier that I have made? And it's not just for big decisions. I mean, do I want to ask those 3 people over there that are setting up Lords of Vegas if they have room for a 4th? Well, at the end of the day, which will I have rather have done? I mean, stood there for an hour without them getting the hint? Or gone over and asked them to join and possibly be shot down, but maybe, just maybe, had the opportunity to spend the time building casino empires with them? I mean, sure, sometimes you won't mesh with the people that you meet, but at least in my case, deciding what do I want more and then acting on it is always more rewarding than backing down without even trying. And that is what brought me to Gen Con. Even though it meant traveling, flying, large crowds of strangers, finding places to eat, constant loud noise, being away from my family, being in an unfamiliar city, and rooming with Stephen Avery. But, all of those things can be rewarding accomplishments in their own way, with the possible exception of the Stephen Avery part. By the time that this video is released, Gen Con 2015 will be concluding. Right now, it's too early to know whether I loved or hated the experience. But either way, it doesn't really matter. Because, at least as it relates to these Meeples for Sheepish Peoples, the important thing is that the little voice in my head and I will have had the experience. What the fuck?
然后我再
喂，哈？什么？哦，没有啦，我就那样子嘛。对啊，最近就是在赚钱赚的有一点太凶了，然后就是你也了解嘛，股票就是。
Hey folks, let's talk about the different games that came out this week that I reviewed last week. Here's the overview. First of all, we have some expansions for Dungeon Fighter: Fire at Will, Big Wave, and Stormy Winds. The 3 of the 4 elements, I already talked about Rock and Roll, which was Earth. Now we have Fire, Air, and Water. I like them all, easily fit into the main box, so I'm keeping all these expansions. If I could only get one, I would probably get Stormy Winds, but the expansions do work really well when combined. Z and I both took a look at Tokaido Crossroads, which is an expansion for Tokaido, although it takes that game from being like a Zen experience to being a more strategic game. And we both agreed that for a gamer, the expansion is a must-have because it adds that much more strategy and tactics to the game. However, it might be overwhelming for the people who enjoyed the experience and the simplicity of the original game. Terrain Odyssey is a 2-player or 4-player tactical card game where you're basically taking an army, a group of people, and fighting another group. Fantastic artwork, and it's almost good. I liked it. It just felt a little bit too clunky, and I don't know, just a bit of AP involved. There was something missing from the game for me. Bring Out Your Dead is a game which is about burying your dead people and hopefully not chucking their coffins in a river. Sounds morbid, but it has kind of a light humor to it and very entertaining little game. Area control, card selection game from Upper Deck. Two Rooms and a Boom is a party-style game that goes up against Werewolf. This is a small box game, and it went over so well with my game group. I thought it was good. My game group thought it was great, so I added it to my collection. Didn't get rid of anything because I was able to stick it in one of these drawers. And then Asking for Troubles. Now, this is a game, a worker placement game, which is another great one. I was very impressed with this, trying to get rid of these trouble aliens off your planet. So placing different workers down on the planet or taking them off. My kids and I both enjoyed this so much that we added it to my collection. What did it replace? Mission Red Planet. That's a cheat because there's a new Mission Red Planet that just came out for Fantasy Flight Games. So when I play that one and add it to my collection, I'll have to make my real choice then. So those are the games that I played last week. See you next time.
Bag. Dice. Roll. Dice Master. Look across the table. Your opponent with his beady white eyes. And you start the game. A bag with 8 white die. You roll the dice. You're liking how this feels. Do not be deceived. This game is kill or be killed. So you buy some dice. And your heart beats faster. Is it paradise? Or disaster? Is it coincidence? That one die is called a die, but to be defeated might also be to die. As it escalates, pawns are defeated. Then you buy the die that you've always needed. Put it in the bag and hope that you select it. Strategy has dots, pray to God you can connect it. So you buy some dice and your heart beats faster. Red, blue, green, and purple. You're a real dice master. Is a coincidence that one die is called a die, but to be defeated might also be to die. Die might also be to die. Die, 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 die might also be to die.
Chaz on Paradise has done an excellent series talking about how he feels when going to a convention. And I found this sort of fascinating because what he's saying on one level, I certainly understand it on an intellectual level, but on a personal level it's very different than the way I feel. So I thought I would talk about how I feel about going to a convention and a little bit about, I thought it may be interesting to see a comparison and contrasting there. When I meet people like Chaz and others at a convention, I just assume that everybody is as excited to be there as I am. When I go to a convention, the more people who are there, the more energy I seem to have. So when I hear that, for example, there were 61,000 people at Gen Con, that is amazing to me. The bigger the convention, the happier I am. Very similar feeling I get when I'm doing a podcast. Like we did our live show there. There was 500 people there. Now, I was nervous at parts. I was nervous when I sang, and I was nervous at the beginning because I wanted everything to go correctly. But I was nervous because of that reason, not because there was 500 people. In fact, I'm more nervous the fewer people. If there's 1 million people, the more at ease I feel. And I don't know why that is. I mean, partially it's because with a large crowd, you can kind of get lost in the crowd. But there just seems to be so much more energy, and the more people around me, the more excited I am. And I love the fact that our booth was incredibly crowded the whole time. And I don't know why I am this way. I grew up in a not a big city. Allentown, Pennsylvania has maybe 200,000 people, but it's not a small city. But I wasn't, I grew up in the middle of it, and so there was always people everywhere, and I've always enjoyed that. Now I'm a bigger guy, so I'm bigger than most people in the crowd, so there's that too. I went and lived in Korea in the Seoul area, which is one of the largest areas in the world, and most certainly enjoyed living and being there also. So I just love this idea of people all around me. Now, it's interesting because while I love having big crowds of people around me, there are times where it can be so much draining and so much out of me that I need to like recharge my batteries, and I will go somewhere by myself. But after about 30 minutes to an hour of that, I feel great and I want to get back into a crowd. Now this is kind of interesting because like Chaz sometimes can be overwhelmed. I can sometimes be overwhelmed by being by myself. When I used to go to conventions before I knew many people at all, it was like, oh, well, who do I eat with? I guess I have to eat by myself. And I hate eating by myself. And I can eat with one person, and I do that often because of meetings. But if there's one person and another person wants to join us, yeah. And if there's a whole table, if you ever go out to eat with me, I will do my best to sit in the very middle of the table because I want to make sure that I can hear everything from all directions. I fear that I'll miss out on part of the conversation somewhere, and I just want to be able to switch from this conversation to this. And I'm at my favorite when we're having one giant conversation at the table, and I just love that. And so this is interesting because, for me anyway, because these big conventions are great. And I will find that because I like doing this, because I'll go around and talk to people and be in the middle of crowds and stuff, that at the end of the day, I am completely wiped. I sleep very well. And when Gen Con was over this year, we flew back and I slept on the plane. I got home and I slept. I got up the next day and I was like, because I had expended so much energy over the course of the convention. And so it's interesting to me for when I go to conventions and I meet people. Most people I don't think are like me and love the crowds. There are some who really do enjoy that. But there are also people like Chaz who, for when I meet them, I think they're enjoying everything. But because of things like the video series he's done, I have to remember that not everybody wants to jump into this with the same sort of unbridled enthusiasm that I have. And so, how do you feel about conventions? Where do you fall on the spectrum? Like for me, the bigger the convention, the better. Sure, small conventions are fine. Sure, I can hang out with a small group of friends. But why have 8 when we can have 200? Why have 200 when we can have 3,000? Why have 3,000 when we can have 500,000 people? I don't know. It's just something that gets me excited. Yeah, I have to charge my batteries every once in a while. But for the most part, for me, the more, the merrier. And that's it for today, folks. You'll notice there are several segments that we're missing from our show today. Segments will be coming back, okay? This is more of a abbreviated board game breakfast, but I still hope that you enjoyed parts of it. I hope you had a good time. Again, thank you to everyone who came by and saw us at Gen Con. For those of you who say, are you done talking about Gen Con? Well, sort of. We have 100 new board games that we will be playing and reviewing. There's all sorts of games that we're going to be talking about. Some amazing stuff is coming your way, folks. We're very excited about that, and it's time to get working on that. So until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vasel and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., an amazing place to buy board games. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.